The Madman! Welcome to Trump Teachings, Quest Warrior. And boy do I have to tell you, this was one of the hardest deck lists to put together because this is one of the deck archetypes which has seen a lot of evolution in terms of what cards are core cards and what cards are good cards to put in. So let's start with asking ourselves, what are the core cards in Taunt Warrior? And believe me, this answer has changed quite a bit. Where I struggled with is that there aren't that many core cards in Taunt Warrior. So this infographic shows that Taunt Warrior is believed to have 24 core cards, and certainly consensus would have it be this way. But I would make the argument that there are only 23 core cards in this deck. I don't believe Dirty Rat is a core card, and I believe that 2 Bloodhoof Brave is core instead of 1 Bloodhoof Brave. There's been a lot of different Quest Warrior decks popularized over the time, and let's go from left to right, which is basically chronological. The first deck that I actually really liked is Show's deck right here. I think it looks very secure. Ornery Direhorn is in this list, which has fallen out of popularity. This is the only list which has an Ornery Direhorn, but I will also say that currently there are versions of the deck still running Ornery Direhorn. And it's legitimate because it is a 6-drop and it's the only 6-drop in the deck. Also a beast for the creator, though Direhorn and Hatchling is usually enough to fetch with the creator. So what's good about this list? Well, it has all the core cards really, and some of the cards are even arguably core, such as Slam and Tar Creeper, and there's the 2 Bloodhoof Brave in here. It's a very solid and secure list. As we go from the left to the right, you're gonna start to see a lot of interesting deviations to it. There's Shield Block and Shield Slam technology. However, I personally believe that it is better to run Tar Creeper as the Shield Block replacement since it counts as both the quest and it's better against aggro because you can actually kill the minions and still gain your 5 health because Tar Creeper defends. But why am I not calling Tar Creeper core, and why am I willing to humor Shield Block? Because Shield Block Shield Slam is admittedly better against decks that don't do very much minion combat. Because your Tar Creeper really sucks against Discover Mage or Freeze Mage, for example, whereas Shield Block can get you out of burn range sometimes. Shield Slam has the slight issue that when you become Ragnaros, sometimes you lose all your armor and you can't actually activate Shield Slam, and it's just a dead card. That happens more often than you would think. There have been some weird choices thrown in as well, which have fallen drastically out of favor, such as I Know a Guy. Turns out that you really don't need that. You can just run all the good taunts instead. Deathwing, which probably is, in my opinion, a bit too much overkill in a deck that will probably have many cards in their hand and has Brawl, and Primordial Drake is just really good anyways. N'Zoth, which seems unnecessary because you simply have your hero power, Ragnaros, already to clean up the board instead of needing that big finisher. You have Spellbreaker, which actually doesn't really make that much sense to me at all. It's a tech card against Tyrion Fordring pretty much, and against a variety of other things, but really especially against Tyrion. Tyrion's really good against the deck. Harrison Jones is one tech card that's pretty good, especially if you face a meta of a lot of weapons. Notably, it's really good against Mage, a Tiesh. They play an 8-drop weapon basically, and you play Harrison Jones, you get rid of a lot of value, you draw 3 cards. That's very strong. So those are all the more exotic tech choices here. In the end, I ultimately decided that I think Tar Creeper is better than Shield Block, and I think that Shield Slam doesn't really have a place in the deck. So let's actually talk about the game plan of the deck. It's actually a fairly straightforward deck. You're mostly playing on curve. Turn 2 Fiery War Axe, Fiery Wind Axe, hopefully. Maybe your Armor Smith. You play turn 3 your Acolyte of Pain, your Stonehill Defender, your Tar Creeper. You play your 4-drop, you play your 5-drop. You just try to go 2, 3, 4, 5. Obviously on turn 1 you play the quest. And then on 7 you play the Curator, which will always get you the Drake and the Hatchling. If your Hatchling has died, it'll always give you the Direhorn Matriarch. And that's very common that you draw 2 with the Curator, which is very good. 7 mana, 4/6 taunt, draw 2. And not only is it draw 2, it's draw 2 very heavy cards, and it's even draw a card that you really want to play on the following turn usually, since 7-drop into 8-drop. This deck has very powerful board clears. Ravaging Ghoul, Whirlwind, and Sleep with the Fishes dealing 4 damage to everything, and Brawl being unconditionally remove everything except one thing. You'll usually be able to get to the end by hiding behind your taunts, and then just inevitably outvaluing them with Fire Plume's Hearts, Ragnaros shots. which Brings us to Kolento's deck. I'll shine a spotlight on that one. He hit rank 1 on EU and NA in the month of April. That's at the end of it. That's very, very, very impressive. So his technology here is he runs a lot of card draw. 2 Acolyte of Pain, 2 Slam, and the Battle Rage. Battle Rage has the potential to draw a lot of cards. Slam is a nice filtering card, but also really good against aggro, and really good at just dealing that extra 2 damage when you need to. And Acolyte of Pain clearly really good. Now, here's where I had the most difficulty in coming up with the list that I was going to present to you for the Trump teachings. Was I going to present Kolento's list, which hit rank 1 legend on both EU and NA, or was I going to present to you the original list from Show, which I looked at and was like, yeah, this is a really good list. It has all the key cards in it, and it's very plain and basic. So ultimately, what I decided on was kind of a mix of the two. Over on the right, you can see that was my previously scrapped intro video and the deck that I was going to play. When I look at it, both of these have some major pros and cons to each other. This list, which is closer to Kolento's, has the major pro that it has the 2 Armor Smiths, so it's able to get out of range of burn decks. Whereas the deck to the right doesn't have any armor gain at all, outside of just armoring up. So when you're on the ropes, you can actually come back in health with this deck, with the Armor Smith and the Whirlwind effects. The cost is that you do not get to run Dirty Rat, and I've decided that Dirty Rat is actually perhaps less core than Armor Smith. Why is this? Well, we live in a slightly different meta now. Dirty Rat is extremely good in the mirror, and it's extremely good against Quest Rogue, but Armor Smith is pretty good against everything. And isn't it better to show a more generically good version? A more generally good version. And Armor Smith, by the way, is especially good with a Battle Rage. I don't think I would run the Armor Smith if not for the Battle Rage technology. Armor Smith often gets wounded a bit, gains you a bunch of armor, and then you cast your Battle Rage, and you've got a lot of card to draw. This deck is 1 card off of Kolento's list. It cuts 1 Acolyte of Pain for 1 Brawl. I looked at the win rate statistics for Kolento's deck, and it saw a lot of popularity in play because Kolento led the way, but no one could match his results en masse. It turns out Brawl is one of the best cards in this deck, and you have to really know what you're doing to cut it. And arguably, it might still be wrong to cut it. And I also looked at the top performing deck list, and it turns out that decks without a second Acolyte of Pain, which I originally was going to call core, did better. In fact, the top performing Quest Warrior right now runs 0 Acolyte of Pain, statistically, on HS replays. What do we have here? We have a bit of a compromise. We've put in 1 Acolyte of Pain, and we've put in 1 Battle Rage kind of replacing the card draw of Acolyte of Pain. We've also got the Armor Smiths for the health gain. And yet, we still have the 2 Brawls. So what got cut? We cut the core card, Core, of Dirty Rat, which is extremely good against Quest Rogue and extremely good against the Mirror, but other than that, maybe not as good as Armor Smith. Who am I to mess with the perfection of Kolento? Well, I'm here to try to make it so that the masses can get Kolento's results without the disaster of losing that very important second Brawl. I think Kolento was definitely onto something as he cut Shield Block and Shield Slam, and he recognized the importance of having the Armor Smiths to dig yourself out of almost deadness rage. He recognizes the importance of the 1 Battle Rage, especially with the Armor Smiths, and the Tar Creepers are extremely good, and the second Bloodhoof Brave I consider core. That is not to say, though, that Kolento's list is the best list. If there didn't exist decks that could burn you down, and your taunt would stick around and be good enough, then I would say that Show's list would be better. If there were a lot of mirrors and a lot of Quest Rogue, then you would be ridiculous not to run Dirty Rat, which is the card which makes those matchups like favored strongly for you. But against the general field, Armor Smith just might be better. In the mulligan, you're definitely looking for Fiery War Axe. You want Ravaging Ghoul, you want Armor Smith, and you want Tar Creeper as just good proactive plays you can make. If you have the 2-drop and you have the 3-drop, then you should keep Bloodhoof Brave as well. So you're just looking to have a good curve layout. Against certain decks, you're going to want to keep the Acolyte of Pain. If you're against control decks, if you're up against an aggro deck, you should mulligan that. And probably the most important thing to realize with this deck is you want to mulligan Fireplume's Heart against aggressive decks. Which is to say, if you're up against a Hunter, you mulligan the card. If you're up against a Druid and aggro Druid is the meta, which it currently is, then you want to mulligan Fireplume's Heart. You're going to die by the time you actually complete the quest against aggro Druid and against Hunter. So the right way to win against those decks is actually just to control the board, and you never actually have to complete the quest. You'll win the game if you just solidify the board with taunt minions. And therefore, you would rather have the extra card and rather not have the useless card. So it turns out that if you have one extra card, you win more against aggro. That's why you mulligan the quest against aggressive decks. If you are running the version of Dirty Rat, then you should also mulligan Fireplume's Heart against Rogue. And then you should aggressively mulligan for Dirty Rat against Rogue and against the Mirror. I think I didn't mention Stonehill Defender, but Stonehill Defender and Acolyte of Pain are keeps against slower matchups. Acolyte of Pain is a toss in the faster matchup. Stonehill Defender is a kind of maybe. You have to look at the context of your hand. It's not an always auto keep. Alright, so this is a Hunter, and it is really important to remember to mulligan this quest against decks that you believe are going to be aggressive. Currently that's really only Hunter and Druid if the meta is very heavily aggro Druid. At the present time, there's enough Jade Druids that I'm not entirely sure about mulliganing this. But against Hunter, yeah, you just toss that thing. Yes, there are also Pirate Warriors, and they're very popular. However, if you're up against the Mirror, if you're up against the Warrior, you cannot mulligan Fireplume's Heart because it's quite possible that they're going to be playing Taunt Warrior. Ravaging Ghoul is one of the best cards against Hunter because they have Alley Cat, and they also have a bunch of 1 health minions. The goal against aggro is fairly straightforward. You're looking to stem the bleeding. Not a great Ravaging Ghoul, but I'll play it. It is important to continue to play on the curve, after all. That can be a decent enough execute. The other play is Coin Direhorn Hatchling, which I will lean towards instead. It's an unorthodox deck that the Hunter has put into his card. Unorthodox card that the opponent put into the deck. So this Ravaging Ghoul is really good with Sleep of the Fishes. Such a play right here would have been amazing. Unfortunately, I don't have it. So I'll go ahead and throw the Slam and the Ghoul on this thing. Very cool, by the way, that the Sleep with the Fishes gets around Stealth, which can come in handy quite a few times.
Such big teeth I have.
The Curator, and generally the Primordial Drake, is the turning point of aggressive matchups. If you manage to land a Primordial Drake, and you're not in too dire of situations, you usually win from there. Because the Primordial Drake is so big by itself, and on top of that, dealing 2 to all other minions usually clears off a good amount.
The menagerie is for guests only.
Start running. The better to eat you with.
One of the things to think about with this deck is not to rush your Sleep with the Fishes, not to rush your executes, not to rush your brawls. Always consider that you might have enough time to play just a general taunt minion, and the opponent will probably have to run into it, and then you set up a bigger brawl or Sleep with the Fishes or execute in the future. In this case, since it was going to be very expensive to not play my 7-drop, I decided to play it there instead of immediately kill off the opponent's card. If I had one more mana, I could Whirlwind Primordial Drake, but here I think we're just going to play Primordial Drake anyways.
What now?
Oh, and I'm going to play the one that I drew from Curator to give him less information. Since players will be keen to see that the Curator will draw 2 cards, one of which will pretty much always be Primordial Drake. Wow, what a saucy deck he has. So it's going to be Whirlwind to execute, and I have 6 mana to work with then. With the Hunter hero power replaced, this now I can just play a strictly board control game and not have to worry too much about my health. This Battle Rage is going to draw a good amount of cards. Armor Smith is also good for reasons more than just comboing immediately. It can usually stay behind a bunch of taunt minions and collect value. And then it's just simple cleanup from here. Having 2 Armor Smiths is especially disgusting when that works out. It makes aggressive decks kind of weak. Also, he can't target Dynamancy on high main. So there you have it, the typical pattern of this deck against aggressive decks in general. Early game, just keep playing on curve. Mid game, you got a big brawl or Sleep with the Fishes out to take control, and then later you hide behind your bigger taunts. As you can see, no Fire Plume's Heart necessary.
Out of my jungle. I have an axe.
Strike! Strike!
Thanks, ladies. This, by the way, is very selective reasoning, but this is one of those games where Armor Smith is way better than Dirty Rat. Dirty Rat usually does pretty poorly against that since you're too afraid of pulling Savannah Hymen from their deck.
I have an axe to grind.
Strike! Strike!
And against an aggressive deck, you're very happy to pretty much never draw Fire Plume's Heart because it actually becomes the worst card in your deck. It's kind of the equivalent of drawing Patches, kind of a dead card. If you draw it early on enough, you can actually still play it and possibly get value from it as it finishes the game, but that's unlikely. So this is a very strong hand because I have the creeper and I have the ghoul against if it's pirate warrior. I have the acolyte of pain if it is taunt warrior. It may seem obvious to coin out acolyte here since he's only got an armor smith, but I believe I can do better than that. By coining out the tar creeper, I play around fiery war axe. This armor smith is going to have a rough time killing herself anyways.
Out of my jungle.
So, given that there's only one acolyte of pain in the deck, you really want to make sure it draws extra cards.
Let the pain speak to me.
So, developing the tar creeper or the Stonehill defender first seems like a very good idea. Even though this matchup is all about who ends up completing the quest first, and whoever completes the quest first will usually win. In order to complete the quest first, you usually have to go through a lot of cards. So as such, cards such as Stonehill Defender are extremely strong. But also cards that draw cards such as Acolyte and Curator, and especially Stonehill Defender. But that's not the best card in the matchup, surprisingly, Stonehill Defender. Even better is Dirty Rat, which is not in this deck. So this deck will have a slightly unfavored matchup against decks with Dirty Rat in it. It is a really simple matchup. Whoever finishes the quest first really is extremely favored. It's as simple as that. There's really not much more to say past that.
Bring the pain.
But something like getting more draws out of the Acolyte of Pain, that is worth mentioning.
I have an axe.
All those small advantages, they add up. Even though in this matchup the armor doesn't really matter that much, and yet grand scale it matters a tiny bit because it might mean the difference between one more rag shot. So the plan is to just play Wrathion, but maybe there's something better here. Maybe a fishy line?
What now?
We can do a slam, slam,
I must choose.
hit ghoul. And it kills my own. So I might as well slam instead.
Start running.
Job done.
Wait, the rope like totally juked me. Yeah, that's pretty solid right there. Alright, so opponent draws 2, it's gonna be the Dire Hatchling and the Primordial Drake, pretty much always. If I draw 2 with the Curator, I'm going to overdraw. In this matchup, the Armor Smiths don't matter too much, so I guess I'll just throw them out. So I do have 7 in my hand, I just have to play them all. So I did mention something along the lines of whoever completes the quest first has a very substantial advantage. Looks like he's in the lead, but he's not gonna complete it that much faster than I will, I believe. Drew the Drake, so I'm gonna draw 1 less card. I should play this card before I draw the Hatchling too, I suppose. No, I can draw the Hatchling and it'll be okay. So plan is to complete with Wrathion, Curator, and Hatchling. I should finish with the Hatchling last because I can go Hatchling Sulfur as hero power. So therefore, the plan is Wrathion into Curator into Hatchling. So that's the importance of kind of like planning out the quest. It seems like I have a set next 3 turn plays.
I
It's a good draw since I can fit that in with the Curator. Unless Primordial Drake is better here. No, because I have to go with Hatchling next turn.
The menagerie is for guests only.
I must choose.
I am free.
So it's actually going to end up being that we'll complete the quest on the same turn. He does have a slight armor advantage, which does actually matter. But if he's going to end up trading stuff off instead of doing something like a brawl, and the brawl was okay here because he had 2 minions as well. Okay, then we're gonna end up around the same amount of armor. Oh. Alright, so my play is scripted here. Unless it's so much better to play, say, Drake. Unless. Which it might be here. No, it's just so much value to press the button. Very difficult to end up with a better play than completing the quest and pushing the button in this matchup. Okay, and we're off to the races. It looks to be a pretty even game. I end up with a slight advantage, it looks like. He's ended up hitting 2 of my biggest minions each time with the Die Insect. Pretty lucky.
Let the pain speak to me.
It is at this point where it does look to be extremely random, but there's always slight optimizations you can make. When you're good enough, you won't even need to flip coins. Making sure that this thing doesn't die to 1 damage seems good. So, as you can see, the armor does end up mattering. It can come down to one player is, like, both players are in range, and it just is based on how many turns you can get minions on the board and attract the hero power. I want to try to get it in such a way that I'm guaranteed the win. Yeah, it's a little too extravagant. But that combos well with fishies. Now, the fishies are just a terrible card right now. So this is fine.
Out of my jungle!
And then the finisher is usually doing something along the lines of brawl, make sure that there are no targets, and then you hero power. In a lot of different ways. Okay, that's a pretty bad hand, but fortunately... well, there's nothing fortunate about this. And fortunately I got the whirlwind. So I do have the deal 4 to everything, which will be really important if he drops War Leader on this turn. Next turn could be Gentle Megasaur, so clearing off all the stuff is pretty useful. But at the same time though, I can get more value. And the Gentle Megasaur also dies to Whirlwind, Sleep with the Fishes. So this is one of those examples of holding the cards. An important skill in Taunt Warrior to hold off on using the big comeback turn. Because once you use it, you're at the mercy of whatever he plays next. You delay as long as you can to use these things generally. And the trick lies in finding that moment where you can use it and not die horribly. And that's not worth sleeping. Oh, the +3 health is actually pretty good for me since I have Sleep for the Fishes. Sleep with the Fishes. And the Abomination will get all of those wounded. No, we can't even kill this 1/3. Good spot to be in. Execute takes out 2 damage, and sleeping takes out 6 damage. And I have another sleep, so that's fine to use. Looks like the next turn is going to be Curator. So I didn't really need the Battle Rage to draw cards, since it's going to be Curator and Primordial Drake almost always. The Brawl is a very good card to draw. Lets me be a lot more greedy. So I can just play a bunch of these small attack taunts, high health. They'll kill it, they'll have a bunch of guys surviving, and then you brawl. And this would be a pretty solid brawl. Although, even better would be the ghoul fish, I think. Though that's not very important here. We don't have ghoul fish. And Slam's good since it sets it up to be Drake next turn. Or Gold. I think this is going to be a very close stabilize. The Paladin deck doesn't have very much burst in it. It only has True Silver and Consecration.
Follow the rules.
Here we've got Ghoul Fishy, and I can slam that thing to bring it into range. Okay, I think we're gonna stabilize. can't be too good to play the secret into this since he has a 1/1 out. So given that he played it without hesitation, he may be running, in this case, Repentance would be my most likely suspicion. Which is good to play this into.
Made to fit.
Wow, it's eye for an eye. I have to keep in mind the quality clears everything no matter what. And I think I'll just go Acolyte of Pain then. No, I'll go another Taunt. Armor up is pretty important though.
Out of my jungle!
So I'm glad we actually got to show a game in which the result was very close. Speaking like I've already won. I was about to make a quite possibly horrific mistake. We do not want Eye for an Eye to trigger here.
Strike.
The original plan was to throw the Die Insect after clearing off the Stonehill Defender, with the hope of hitting Ancient of Blossoms, but hitting his base would have been really bad.
My jungle.
Strike.
So that game is pretty much cheers to Sleep with the Fishes. Doing some pretty efficient things. Efficient things. Heh 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 heh.